I do think in the end, this winds up being a Jets-Raiders trade. All right, it is the October 3rd. Mailbag week 4 is in the books. We're looking forward to week 5. And we'll start this week with the most obvious question of the week, which is coming from Matt Anderson. That's at Mashed Anderson on Twitter. Which team is most likely to trade for Davante Adams? I'm going to give you the answer, Matt, that everybody would give you, which is the New York Jets. There's the obvious connection there with Aaron Rodgers. And teams involved in this situation do believe that Adams is trying to steer himself to the Jets. The Bills have inquired. The Steelers have inquired. The New Orleans Saints are on the periphery of this. Adams, of course, has some power to steer the process. I don't think any team will trade for him at his age if he doesn't sign off on going there. And he has let the Raiders know of his preferences. He'd prefer to play with a quarterback that he has experience with. The Jets are at the very top of that list. The Saints would be on that list too. Of course, he and Derek Carr were together at Fresno State and for that single year with the Raiders. Now, I don't expect the Saints to be involved in the end in this because of their cap situation. Buffalo, although they checked in, probably isn't going to make the trade either, again, because of the cap implications. I do think in the end, this winds up being a Jets-Raiders trade. The hard thing to do then is find value. If other teams involved don't think that you're serious about trading him to you, then you'll probably be less apt to put forth a serious offer. And he's kind of a hard player to value. I did hear earlier in the week about the Raiders wanting a second round pick. That seems unlikely to me. To me, the best comps in this situation would be Keenan Allen and Stephon Diggs. Diggs is 11 months younger than Adams. Allen is 8 months older than Adams. Their numbers were comparable last year. In fact, Diggs and Allen had slightly better numbers than Adams did. Of course, Allen and Diggs have better quarterback situations. Allen brought home for the Chargers a fourth-round pick in that trade with the Bears. Steph Diggs was traded to the Texans for a second-round pick, but Diggs went back with fifth and sixth-round picks, and that second-round pick was a year out. So that's roughly third-round value. So I think the value here is a 3 or a 4. The question again, if other teams view this as a fait accompli that he's going to wind up with the Jets, if the Raiders can't get a bidding war going, then does it become more difficult for the Raiders to get value or for the Jets and Raiders to do an honest deal? I think that'd be the challenge here. I do think he winds up with the Jets, but I don't think that that's all said and done either. I think there's an opportunity for other teams to jump into this. Question number 2 from Brendan McDonough. This is over the email. With the recent Bryce Young failure in Carolina, do you anticipate a shift in philosophy across the league with starting highly drafted rookie quarterbacks right away? How is that? How likely is it that Sanders, Beck, Ewers, et cetera, start week 1 next year, understanding that each team and situation can be different? I think so much of it, Brendan, depends on your own situation. And I think what's so difficult for so many of these teams is that you get down the line in a season and you get to week 4, you get to week 8, you get to week 12, and there's public pressure to put the rookie in. There can be pressure from your locker room to give the rookie a shot if your season is going the wrong way. And typically these guys wind up going to bad teams because they're drafted at the very top. If you want to look over the last 17 draft cycles, going all the way back to 2008. It's really 16 draft cycles. It's not counting this one. There were 48 quarterbacks drafted in the first round from 2008 to 2023, and only 3 of them were real redshirts. That's Jake Locker in 2011. It's Patrick Mahomes in 2017. If you fudge it a little bit, he did start the game at the end of the year, but he was really a redshirt. And then Jordan Love in 2020. And those 3 teams had 2 things in common. One, both of those teams contended to the very end of the season. The Packers and Chiefs made the playoffs. The Titans were 9-7 and were in it to the very end. And second, all 3 of those teams had established starting quarterbacks. The Titans had Matt Hasselbeck, who had been to a Super Bowl 6 years earlier. The Chiefs had Alex Smith, and the Packers, of course, had Aaron Rodgers. So without those pieces in place, without a contending team, and an established starting quarterback, which takes all the pressure off of everybody to put the young kid out there. It's really hard to go through an entire season without at least trying to get a look at the guy. And it does have, and on the back end, it can have some benefit. Even if you play a guy for 4, for 6, for 8 weeks, you at least have a better idea of what you're looking at. Now, the risk is, of course, that you could damage the kid if you throw him out there in a bad situation before he's ready, when he's constantly in bad down and distance, when he's constantly playing from behind. You want to try to avoid that, but there can be benefit to playing a kid down the stretch. And if you want to look at this year's quarterback class, JJ McCarthy is off the table now, but he might have been in that situation, where you've got a contending team and an established starting quarterback. Caleb Williams is starting. Jaden Daniels is starting. Bo Nix is starting. You have Michael Penix, who has the potential to be in that situation with a contending team and a established starting quarterback. We know the established starter is there in Kirk Cousins. Do the Falcons wind up being a contender throughout the year? We'll see, but it looks like they could be. And then you have Drake May with the Patriots, and that's the one where he really needed the time to sit. And they have done creative things to try to ramp him up and get him ready to play and put him in a position to start if he needs to start. They've given him first team reps in practice on concepts, plays that Jacoby Brissett is really comfortable with and might not need the rep on. They've run him out there with a scout team so he can play against an NFL defense. They've split those scout team reps too. So Joe Milton gets some of those. And when Joe Milton is out there, they have him working to the side on Patriots offensive stuff with TC McCartney. So they've done stuff to get him ready to go, but they're not a contender. And they don't really have like that quarterback that the rest of the locker room is going to look at and say, yeah, that's our guy. I can see why we aren't starting the young kid. So that's going to be an interesting one to follow. But Penix is set up in a way that's not that different than the way Jake Locker was set up in 11, Patrick Mahomes was set up in 17, or Jordan Love was set up in 2020. And so that's the one where you see that could be a real red shirt. Does it affect the other kids going forward? It depends on where they go. It depends on whether or not those guys are top 5 picks. I don't think any of them, any of the kids that are going to be in next year's class are locks to go in the top 5. Not Carson Beck, not Shedeur Sanders, not Quinn Ewers. I just don't see those kids right now as being locks to go that high. But it could happen. And based on where they go, I think that really will determine, what sort of chance they have to see the field in year one. Finally, the third question for the week. This is from Ronnie at Trey40. In your opinion, if the Chiefs acquire a wide receiver, who are the most realistic trade options for them? Ronnie, I think you have to look at the teams that are going to be out of it, and you have to look at the teams that have a surplus of receivers and have guys on their roster that they might view as guys that won't be there by the time they're contending, whether that's a year or two down the line. So I think Carolina is one team you can certainly look at. Deontay Johnson is in a contract year. You have Adam Thielen there. Obviously, he's aging. Those two, I think, would be options for the Chiefs. And then I think the Titans would be another team to look at, where I think they hold on to Calvin Ridley, but could DeAndre Hopkins be an option? That's certainly possible. And then if you want to go down the distressed asset road, which the Chiefs went down that road a couple of years ago, in acquiring Kadarius Toney, who didn't work out in the long run, but contributed to a Super Bowl win. Treylon Burks is a first-round pick who's sort of fallen out of favor there. Obviously, the people who drafted him are not there anymore. And he does have physical ability, so he could be somebody the Chiefs could look at and say, if we can get him in our program, maybe we can get him straightened out, at least in the short term, and he can help us out.